All right, so welcome. It's good to be back here again, and so glad just to be doing this and to have the opportunity even to share with you the music that we just shared together. As I was saying a minute ago, just growing up in Chicago and living close to the city, just being aware of what's going on there in places that I've been, places that I've lived and how the world is behaving right now. It just feels very present for me. And in fact, may feel present for others as well. So, this has called me to feel as though maybe I'd like to start a little differently today. So, we're going to have an sort of an opening ceremony, which I will record. But then we'll have an opportunity maybe to introduce ourselves. That could be recorded or unrecorded, however you like. Then we'll have sort of a brief guided meditation. Welcome, Stephanie. We're just having an overview of how today's going to go. And after we have this brief meditation, then we'll have a comfort break for about 10 minutes. Then I'll offer my sharing. Um, and we'll have the practice of community, which would be the opportunity for us to dig into our own experiences and thoughts and feelings and carrying forwards of everything that I've shared or things that have come up for you in relationship to that. We'll have a dedication of merit, an opportunity for a community picture. Doesn't have to happen. But just wanting everyone to know you're invited to come and go as you see fit. You're welcome to be on or off camera as you see fit. And whatever it is that you do, please listen and attend to your own body because your needs are important. By attending to your needs, you are attending to the needs of everyone. So, given what I've said about sort of where my baseline is today, where my experiencing is today, and here we are in November, I'd like to offer the opportunity for all of us maybe just to visualize, imagine clearly we're here in this virtual space together, but let's imagine that we're sitting down together at a table. And we have the opportunity to make that table everything that we need it to be. So perhaps we're going to spread, a beautiful cloth or have other ornaments that make the table beautiful. And we're going to share a delicious and a healthy meal together. So I'm the host and I'm providing the space, the container for this. I'm providing the table, but we're all here to create this experience together of having this beautiful and functional space. So maybe just calling to mind those things that you would most like to have with you. If you were sitting down to be with people that you really hope to enjoy time with. So calling in those things and imagining having those around you. Thinking about how that would feel on your fingers as you touch those items. Thinking about how that would smell. Because I'm the host, I'm going to provide the entree for this meal, but we're all going to provide something. We might provide some of the ornamentation. We might provide other things to eat. So all these contributions, just like food, they might be sweet, they might be salty, they might be bitter or sour or umami. And any one of these things, any one of these flavors or experiences on their own might be for any one of us either too much or too little, somehow distasteful. But when we bring it all together, all the flavors that we represent and that we are bringing to this table, we are creating the balance that we need, that we most need at this time for this experience. So maybe just sinking into that, imagining for a moment and allowing whatever comes to mind for you. I would most like to see flowers, but I want it to be this kind of flower. I would most like to see candles and I want them to look like this. I want them to smell like this. And holding that image, holding that image, also allowing yourself to bring into your awareness just what it is you're experiencing right now as you get ready to come into this space together. What's happy or dull? What's exciting or scary? Whatever it is that you're bringing with you from the world, and whatever it is that you hope to experience now. Imagining being able to lay those things on the table, whether they're sweet or sour or bitter, anything, any flavor at all. And that whatever it is that you're holding is going to add to the balance and help us to create exactly what we need at this moment in this experience. So from there, I'd like to invite us as we're sitting around this table to have a moment of sort of just brief introductions where we might share, for instance, and again, whatever we choose to share, that's up to us. And if we choose not to share, silence is a very acceptable form of sharing. Sharing can take place on or off camera. Um, it can take, I can pause the recording while we share for any individual one of us. Um, but perhaps just inviting a name and something that we would like to bring to the table right now. So I'll start, and obviously I'm Laura, and what I really want to bring to the table right now is the opportunity for us to share and connect in community around what I'm sharing, but also around whatever else is being experienced in each of you and all of us as a group. So I will bow out for this moment. If you would like to share, but you want me to turn the recording off, just raise your hand and I'll pause the recording. And if you want to share, just unmute yourself and feel free to do that.
I'll share. And maybe do you mind stopping the recording just because I'm shy?
Absolutely. So thank you everyone for being here at the table with us in a way that is the most right for you, because that is the right way for all of us. And I'd like to offer a little sort of grounding or attunement and guided meditation at this time to get us started. So, what I'm going to offer is um, based on a teaching that I heard Thich Nhat Hanh offer that he described as generating happiness. But it's it's my interpretation of what I heard. So as we're sitting around this table and having the opportunity to be together, we've placed on the table all the things that we need, all the things that we believe would be supportive and delicious and beautiful for us. And we're drinking in the experiences of that, the aromas of that. We've placed on the table something about ourselves. And now I give the invitation to simply let go. And letting go starts by simply noticing whatever it is that we're experiencing. So perhaps starting by allowing the breath to move in and out of the body and allowing our awareness to move with the breath. So as we inhale, we may notice that there's tension in some part of the body, maybe even in the throat, maybe in the shoulders, maybe in the forehead, anywhere in the body, could be in the back, in the seat, in the legs. Noticing what the experience of having a body is like right now. And following the breath, breathing in to the body. And just like we set our table, noticing perhaps that there are beautiful things in our body, there are practical things in our body. Our heart is beating, our lungs are receiving the breath, our blood is flowing. And there are delicious things in the body, and there also may be difficult things. Whether it's sweet, sour, bitter, whatever the flavor, whatever the experience is, whatever that experience is in the body, noticing and letting go. Noticing the tension. And even if that sensation of tightness in the muscle doesn't want to let go, letting go of the relationship to that tension. Noticing all the practical things that our body is doing for us so generously. Breathing, the blood flowing, the posture that your body is helping you to be in right now. Noticing all of that and letting it go. Just as we were, just as we were setting our table and noticing what we most felt that we needed, having some gratitude that what we most need is already right here present in the body. The breathing that we need is here, present in the body. The heartbeat that we need is here, present in the body. The muscles, bones, the processes of digestion and elimination, all present right here in the body, just like that beautiful table that we prepared. So perhaps allowing that sense of how beautiful all of this is that is given to us here right now without request, how there can be gratitude, appreciation, thankfulness, not for perfection, but for exactly how it is. Mm. Taking a few breaths in and out with that, noticing if that sort of awareness calls you to move in any way, perhaps shrugging your shoulders, turning your head side to side, moving your posture, and regardless of whatever movements that you are not enabled to make at this time, bringing some gratitude for what can be possible in the body right now. Whatever it is that comes to your mind as what you're grateful for, perhaps allowing your awareness to really sit with that deeply. I am deeply grateful for this aspect, this sensation, this part, this process, whatever it is in your body, letting your awareness sit with that, like an exploration of how deeply you can be both aware of that and appreciative of that gift that is given to you right now. And if you're noticing perhaps some other aspect of your body with appreciation right now, allowing that your awareness to expand to include that as well. And noticing perhaps if it's possible to just slow down with that a little bit, like really looking deeply into each area that might come to mind, asking for awareness and appreciation right now. Like, as you notice them, you say, yes, yeah. And spending a few moments in silence, being with and appreciating the body. And finally, never leaving that appreciation for our own bodies, beginning to allow awareness to expand to encompass our body, the body of all of us gathered here. How there is a togetherness, an energy, a support, an intention. How we each bring what is uniquely ours to this body. And that no matter what the flavor, energy, taste, color, size, shape, no matter what that is, how that contributes to the beauty and the balance of our body together. And taking a moment or two in silence with that, feeling into that, appreciating. Slowly, with care for your body and your body's process, allowing your awareness to return from the space that you've been occupying into the shared space of this community. And really paying attention to whatever it is your body might need right now, whether it's bringing some movement or being still, stretching, yawning, having a drink, whatever that might be. And again, knowing that as you care for your needs, you attend to the needs of all. Okay, so apologies to everybody who's watching the recording at a later time. I had invited a discussion of disability to start us off today, and I had offered my shirt, Disability is Not Inability, as well as just sort of the uh, glossary definition that, that prefix dis means to exclude or opposite or not. And we just talked about we thought maybe our definitions of disability might be. what I want to offer is one of the things that I've been reading for today has been this book, in Garama said, which is Iroquois Teachings from the Oral Tradition by Tom Porter or Seko Quinioquas. So I want to share some of what he said, and then also some of what has been extracted from his book in Disability History of the U.S. Because in the traditional indigenous worldview in the continent of what's called North America, there wasn't a word for disability. There wasn't a concept for disability. It was believed that every person, no matter how they were manifested, had a gift, a special skill, a special ability, or a special purpose. And that when individuals, communities, and the world were in harmony or balance, that would be the achieving the full expression of all of our gifts, all of our abilities. So, for instance, the example that Kim Nielsen uses in Disability History of the US, she says, okay, so if a young person had a cognitive impairment or differing function, that person might be an excellent water carrier, and that was their gift. And just as there was no concept of disability, this concept of able-bodiedness would also have had little meaning because it was never even under consideration that one body might be more fitting than another. It's inconsequence because the concept was that balance was achieved between the spirit, the body, and the mind as they were manifested, exactly as they are. So that meant that regardless of whether a person was blind, had chronic pain, had mobility issues, and Kim Nielsen points out there were many impairments that were achieved over the course of a rugged life through hunting accidents and the cold, and there were many things that we would consider impairments, but none of this was of consequence as long as that person was able to achieve balance in themselves and in the community. And she also points out that nearly every indigenous group had signed language, right? Because there were literally, nobody was doing census when the Pilgrims landed, and there's apparently a great deal of disagreement about how many indigenous people might have existed on the continent of North America before the arrival of colonizers. So estimates vary from 2.5 million people on the low side to 18 million on the high side. And that's in many different communities speaking many different languages. And so they had developed signed language as a way so that they could communicate both within intra-community, but also within themselves. So if a person was deaf, there was already signed language. It was just a given. So the culture was designed to accommodate differences. It was designed to accommodate differences. So because I like words, I want to suggest a couple of suggestions for a definition of disability. So here's one. Disability, having a natural body that performs natural functions in accordance with its unique capabilities. And another possible definition of disability, and this one is in relationship to the world we experience today. Disability is a label applied in ableist culture to create an artificial division between people into prescribed normative and non-normative categories for the purposes of exclusion. I want to be very clear. Again, I am saying this in relationship to the culture in which I live. Because my experience is that most of the time, if somebody calls me disabled, it's not because they're trying to figure out how to include me. It's for the purposes of exclusion. So I want to give you a second to reflect upon that. And again, if anybody would like to comment or add their own definitions, further definitions, I'd be happy to pause the recording. Just raise your hand and I'll pause the recording if you have anything you'd like to add.
And I was about to say I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry. So I'm sorry, I was taking cakes out of the oven at the same time. So this definition, when was it from? Or I know, I mean, post-colonial, obviously.
Are you talking about the definitions that I shared?
Yes, exactly. Sorry.
Those are from out of this mind that just.
Oh, okay.
They're my definitions.
They're based on what you've understood from, yeah, from
They're
all your
because
things.
they're because I like to define things.
Right. And I mean, that's helpful because it's usually what people are implying is a norm versus who or what they think you are. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Sure, no problem.
I also like to think of the label as, I mean, I do agree that it can be exclusive, but it also can be inclusive in the sense of us all being in community right now. And we all, I assume, have different disabilities, but there are a lot of overlapping experiences and a lot of room for communal interaction, and sort of together we're stronger.
Thank you so much for that. That is certainly our intention. And I believe that, if any of us are using that word, that's our intention. And at the same time, it felt important to me to articulate the exclusive sort of definition because it's not understood. So thank you so much for that. So I want to move on, and we'll have more opportunity to share later. It's been such a joy digging into this book, as I said before, and Grandma said, Indigenous teachings from the oral tradition, Iroquois teachings from the oral tradition. I want to share a particular, I guess I would call it tradition. And I'm not even it's really long, so I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce the indigenous word. But one thing that Tom Porter does explains about this tradition is that our translations of it are inadequate. Okay, so we tend to call it either an opening address or a Thanksgiving address. But what Tom explains is that really what the name they have for it means is this is what we do before we do anything important. He says, he describes it as the skeleton key that opens every door. So, and it feels important for me to share with you that he describes this as, I'm going to share this with you in an incredibly condensed form because he describes this as taking all day. So even without knowing the content, think about the difference in culture that says, well, listen, folks, we have to make an important decision. Let's get together and talk about it. And first, we're going to spend all day getting ready. Not this culture, right? So that's the first thing. Let me start by telling you what the elements are. Each element. So in the book that I shared with you, Tom Porter shares what he calls, the Reader's Digest version, so that it could go into this book. But each element is expressed with reverence, with gratitude, with great description for, okay, what are the elements? Kind of like when I was talking earlier about, let's think about what we really need on this table. You might even, you say, well, I want a brocade tablecloth. But then you start to think about, well, what are the threads? And what is the pattern? And like really, really looking deeply at the beauty of each of the elements that are involved in all the things that are being shared. So the first element that's offered gratitude to is the Creator. And from there is articulated sort of kind of almost like an order of events. The Creator, that there is great reverence and gratitude for, who made Mother Earth, with great reverence and gratitude for everything that is on this beautiful world. And after Mother Earth, Creator made water and all the beautiful things that water does for us, the ways in which it gives us life and supports the plants and the animals. Next, made fish and all kinds of water creatures that actually support the water and provide food for us and do many other things. Next, the Creator planted medicine next to rivers and ponds, gave us food that's in the garden, made berries, made trees, put animals in the forest, made birds, gave 4 winds that lead to seasons and balance. Put up in the sky our grandfather, the thunderers, that create weather for everything that needs to occur. Made 2 suns in the sky, Big Man, that we think of as the sun, and Grandma Moon. Put stars in the sky that Tom describes as Grandma's diamonds, the diamonds that she's wearing. And each of these elements expressed with great reverence and gratitude. And then finally, humans were made last. And as Tom tells the story, he says, well, Creator had been very, very busy and had been making a lot of things. and might have been exhausted and kind of tired by the time Creator came to making us. So we have imperfections. We are imperfect more than other living things. Because humans, we always try to be somebody we're not. We forget who we are. We exaggerate. We don't tell the truth. We've always got a mask on. That's part of this Thanksgiving address. So all of creation ending with the imperfection of humans. So, because humans are imperfect, the Creator made the four beings. Here's what Tom said, they've been assigned especially to babysit us because of that one fault we have, of not being able to tell the truth for what it is. And anytime things would get out of hand, one of them would volunteer to be born as a human. Tom gives some examples. In the indigenous tradition, peacemaker, Buddha, Confucius, Jesus. Each of these was one of the four beings that volunteered to help us get back on track. So again, all of this is said before doing anything important. It's bringing in the reverence for everything that is beautiful and supportive for us in this world, and an appreciation of our imperfection. Doesn't actually sound familiar to me in decision-making circles that I'm aware of. And then the story sort of ends with these words that Tom offers on keeping the peace. So once we've called in all this appreciation and all of its detail, and we've invested our thoughts and our minds and our hearts into that, we've understood and accepted our imperfections. Tom says, put your whole heart into what you've learned and shared, so that the spirit of your ancestors, our Creator, our peacemaker, can talk right through your body and use you so that you can communicate peace. And then our people, we will get better. We will be united again. So in the Iroquois tradition, before anything important was done, there was reverence for all the natural world. There was an understanding and acceptance of human imperfection, and a calling in of these four beings that will from time to time express themselves in one incarnate being, but always have the opportunity to speak through us if we are open to receiving wisdom and we put our whole heart into understanding all of what has gone before. So then we come to capitalism, because today we're talking about disability justice and anti-capitalist politics. So again, just to repeat the principle, that Sins Are Invalid has articulated. In an economy that sees land and humans as components of profit, we, disabled people, are anti-capitalist by nature of having non-conforming bodies and minds. So having listened to the Thanksgiving address, or the opening address, we can understand why this was not of consequence to the indigenous Iroquois on the North American continent, because all of that was already thrown out. But on the other hand, we are living with capitalism, and if this planet was a body, I would say that it has a disease. There could be many names for it. It could be brutality, hatred. Shakyamuni Buddha called it delusion. So that fault of the humans for not being able to see things as they are, for delusion, our propensity for delusion, is what brings disease, dis-ease to this planet. And in practice, perhaps the name, whether we call it brutality, hatred, disease, perhaps the name is not as important as the medicine, which is to keep ourselves as cells in the body of the planet as clean and healthy as possible, which the Thanksgiving address, for instance, gives us a path to walk on to do that. So I may be a little philosophically different from Sins Invalid here, because I don't actually think capitalism is the problem. I think it's the iteration of capitalism that's the problem. It's the way we do capitalism, because, if you want to go to Wikipedia, it has an incredibly long list of economic systems. Capitalism is an economic system. There's some people out there calling it a social system, but that's not me. So there's a long list of economic systems that include, for instance, communism, socialism, anarchy, monarchy, capitalism. But we've heard horrible things about all of these. And we talked recently about the Kakavati Sutta, which basically is the Buddhist story of the wheel turning monarch, how to be a good leader. And it's all based on this structure of monarchy. So Buddha didn't say monarchy can never be good because there's one person holding all the power. Buddha said a social system, an economic system, can be good when it adheres to ethical principles and follows the basic, a short list of strictures that he laid out. So I'm saying it's the way we do capitalism. And right now we've been ramping this up on steroids for so long. Because when we sort of left feudalism and went into, we ended up in industrialization. And first it was moving people off of farms into like workshops where they're working with their hands. And then it was machine industry. And all kinds of people would be injured with machines without rules and regulations, or maybe just ethical principles, or maybe a Thanksgiving address. dictating how we should be using machines so that people are served. And now we're ramping it up even higher with artificial intelligence, because now we're trying to say, well, we don't need our minds. We've got other things that can think for us. So, particularly drawing from Kim Nielsen's book, Disability History of the United States, there's just so many examples of how again, I'm speaking in North America, we hear right from the beginning, there were not ethical principles involved in how we were going to run our economy. Slavery, there's one. A huge justification for slavery, by the way, was that inherently the Africans that were kidnapped and brought to North America were by definition disabled and not able to care for themselves. Enslaving raids, old men and women were just killed right there in their villages because they were considered to be of no value. And went on this horrible, disease-ridden ocean voyage to the US. People on these ships got sick, injured, they were thrown overboard. So there was no respect for life in slavery, no respect for ethics in slavery. Voting. We have lots of stuff going on right now about voting. Well, right from the beginning, in Kim Nielsen's chapter on 1776 through 1865, there were disability-based voting restrictions alongside and often intermingled with restrictions based on race and gender. So right from the beginning, the creation of the United States intermingled with it was this concept of who's gonna be okay for this? I get to decide who fits, as opposed to, in contrast to the indigenous Iroquois concept of everybody has something to contribute. And Kim Nielsen reminds us that right from the beginning, women's bodies were considered inherently disabled. Immigration, this is something that I was really not mindful of. Disability was one way in which it was determined who and who could not immigrate into the US. There are Ellis Island records that vividly show how persons attempting to immigrate were physically inspected, categorized, and really quite arbitrarily accepted or rejected based on ignorant presumptions. There's stories that she tells about people that had sponsors. They had family here already that were sponsoring them. They had a job waiting for them. They had a home waiting for them. But they were short and hunchback, and they were just sent back. No, I don't really believe you're going to be able to keep that job. I don't believe you're really going to be able to do that, so I'm just sending you back. Body autonomy. Again, these are all issues that we are talking about today. I don't know how much when on a daily basis, when I think about my disability, when I'm working with the whatever obstacles I'm experiencing in my body because of what my limitations are, I don't necessarily think back to the fact that oh, actually, originally, yeah, very close to the beginning of this country, disabled people were institutionalized like cattle, not like humans, like cattle, and that physical defects, as medicine began to develop into what we experience today, physical defects by doctors and scientists were initially being categorized as mental and moral defects that made people incapable. And yes, you should be. We got to get you away from me because you could be dangerous. And of course, worst of all, women who were institutionalized could be subject to forced sterilization. The statistic that Kim Nielsen cites is that more than 65,000 Americans underwent forced sterilization between from the 1960s until the early 2000s when her book was published. This was established in law by a Supreme Court case called Buck versus Bell in 1927, which is still active law. Forced sterilization is still legal throughout the United States. So it's not that we don't have the ability as humans, as living, breathing beings, to connect with a system of ethics, to decide that we want to use reverence for the world around us, and to bring all of that into an understanding of our imperfections when we engage in making decisions and establishing policies. But it is also human that this can happen. Coming back to Buddhist principles, we've talked about right view and right intention in recent gatherings. So there's a principle called right livelihood. And I think that US capitalism pretty much defines right livelihood as anything that makes the most money possible. It's true, there are some people that make a lot of money that get in trouble, like drug cartels and gangs. And then there's other people that make a lot of money that also cause a lot of harm that don't get in trouble. Like the Sackler family that were responsible for steroids. Like, frankly, I would say Amazon for the way the conditions in their warehouses and insanity that can go on there with their workers. So when you contrast these two views, what Tom Porter puts out in his Thanksgiving address and what US capitalism puts out, one of them is very living, organic, being centric. And I would say the other, if we really say that the most important thing, the ethic in our culture is to make the most money possible, that's sociopathic. An ethic that accumulation of the utmost possible, whatever the consequences for other living beings anywhere in the world, is inherently sociopathic. We have so many examples of the negligent design of US capitalism that embodies so many intersectional failures. One example in Kim Nielsen's book that I'll share with you, and then I'll stop talking about depressing stuff, is coal mining in West Virginia. So she says, hey, guess what? During World War I, more miners died in southern West Virginia coal mines than US soldiers in Europe. And she goes on to say that while at that particular time in history, finding reliable disability statistics is difficult, it actually appears that the rate of serious injury in that time period was 8 times higher than the rate of death. That's incredible. That's incredible. During this period, company doctors actually told coal miners that coal dust was good for them. And then in what I feel is like the crowning blow of the definition of the poison of capitalism that feeds into this flaw, this delusion, how we forget ourselves, is that then in the 1960s, okay, so we've gone from World War I to the 1960s, and this stuff is still really dangerous. A union was formed, United Mine Workers of America, and they negotiated an industry financed but union controlled welfare and retirement fund that was going to begin to make money available to support all these people who had either lost their breadwinner because they were killed in a mine or had been disabled and no longer were able to work. But guess what, folks? Corrupt union leadership in the 1960s depleted those funds. Corruption is possible everywhere. So even though something that was supposed to help was created, and it was even created in a way so that the union would control it as opposed to the industry, corruption infiltrated the union. So then as she tells it, it was kind of in a very stuck struggle for a while around all of this. But then national attention got swayed when 78 coal miners were killed in an underground mine explosion in 1968. And suddenly some of these doctors started saying, look, we can't participate in this more. They're trying to cover everything up. This truth started to come out about Black lung disease. And some energy started going to the movement, and a reformer tried to unseat this corrupt union president who was milking these funds. But guess what? His wife, and his daughter were shot dead in their beds by assassins hired by the corrupt union president. When this ideology of the most accumulation, no matter what, infiltrates the thinking, even when you're in a position that's supposed to support, this thinking can poison the efforts. This example is so devastatingly raw about how this happens. So one of the writers of the disability justice principles Aurora Levins Morales. She says that anytime what we're fighting for brings us into conflict with the legitimate needs of another group of people, it's a sure sign the picture is too small. And that's something that maybe that corrupt union president could have been thinking about. You know, I'm fighting for more money. I want to steal this money for me, but this is bringing me into conflict with all these people that I'm supposed to be helping. So Kimberly Crenshaw, who developed the intersectionality theory, says intersectional failure is the consequence of a political vision that is meant to be transformative, but fails to integrate many of the baselines upon which it is activated. And in that failure, it makes itself vulnerable to political conditions that actually rob the movement of its ability to do what it even claims to want to do. And she was talking about this in terms of movements that are attempting to right some of the wrongs, how there can be disconnections between movements that are trying to create justice, but this is at the heart of, you know, the democratic failure of the United States. You know, supposedly it has these big dreams and these big goals, but have we firmly interrogated the baselines? Are we really paying attention to how it's going forward? So the system fails, and again, these are my words now. You know, the system fails. It causes so much harm. It can be really scary. But it's not, you know, the system is just a tool that somebody picked up and decided to use. It's the way people are using the tool that is harmful. And even though it's really oppressive and really scary so many times, if it's just people, we're people. We need to do what we can to keep ourselves as cells in the body of the planet as clean and as whole as possible. Health can be just as infectious as disease. So I want to return to right livelihood for a moment, because we're talking about capitalism, and I'm pretty much said that capitalism doesn't involve a right livelihood the way that it's practiced here, because it's sociopathic. How can that be right? How can that be right for humans? So I think that, for instance, the Thanksgiving address is like the Turtle Island Indigenous call to right livelihood through its own version of what the Buddhist principles of right view and right intention call in. The Thanksgiving address that I shared in brief, it's all about right view. It's about taking that whole day before you do something important to get your view on straight. Think about what you're grateful for and how imperfect you are. And then from the intention of honoring all of that, to move into decision making. It's important to remember that this story and others like it from other indigenous cultures tell us that we are not alone. We as disabled people may feel as though, you know, we are sort of being ground down in this system, but we are not alone. This wisdom of wholeness has existed on every continent and still exists through those teachings if we choose to, first of all, imbibe them, take them in and be healed and nourished by them. And second of all, to allow ourselves to be cleansed. We don't have to be even though we live in a capitalist society, which means I gotta have money in order to do anything because that's how it works. I don't have to embody the principles of the way that capitalism is practiced in my culture. We are not alone. Indigenous and traditional wisdom would join with me in saying that this iteration, this incarnation of capitalism is immoral. The Kakavati Sutta tells us that. The Kakavati Sutta says we need to have ethics, just protection, money provided to the poor, and we need to have guidance sought from higher powers. What we're doing is immoral in this, and if we engage in this view of capitalism. Tom Porter's recitation of what we do before we do anything important, it tells us we can, for ourselves, call in every element of the natural world, because those elements are as much designed to rely upon our appreciation and support as we are designed to rely upon theirs. So if I just have a little postage stamp of influence, I can make that investment in my postage stamp. So remember, something I shared, I think the first month, Larry Ward says we have to move from information into knowledge and from knowledge into wisdom. I said not all information can become wisdom. It's up to us to use the discernment. To say, yeah, I'm going to follow what feels wise to me. And again, because this is disability justice and the Dharma we're talking about today, Shakyamuni Buddha says that in order for knowledge to lead to wisdom and liberation, it must use right view, reflect and adopt a perspective, reflecting and a balanced and intentional gaze toward a profound understanding of the true nature of reality, and embody right intention, seek out, nurture, and encourage thoughts and intentions that are in balance with the true nature of reality. And that is why I say for myself, practice is everything and everything is practice. So that means that, later today, if I decide to have cake when I know I shouldn't have cake, okay, maybe that wasn't the right practice. I make these little decisions all the time about how I'm going to live my life. And all of those decisions are practice. How am I practicing? I can wake up to what I'm practicing at any moment and not kick myself for having had the cake, but just say, oh, look, I'm awake. I can choose now. I can choose now what is in balance with what my needs are. So I want to share a quote from Thich Nhat Hanh. He says, and this is from his book, The Art of Living, when we stop to breathe, we're not wasting time. Western capitalist civilization says time is money and that we should use our time to make money. We can't afford to stop and breathe or enjoy a walk or marvel at the setting sun. We can't afford to lose time. But time is more precious than money. Time is life. Coming back to our breathing and becoming aware that we have a wonderful body, this is life. So I'm going to stop the recording.